watching Dro TV. Welcome back to the CannaBiz show. Today we are joined by Joe Newting of the Casually Baked podcast. Joe, thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thanks for having me, Mike. Happy to be here.
First off, how was your New Year's? Were you traveling a little bit?
Yeah, it's always so crazy how people start slowing down after Thanksgiving, and it feels like in our world, in the media and cannabis space, like life is like cranking up. And I had a lot going on, but I had a scheduled trip to Belize in the middle of December. So I was forced to just hit the brakes and go to a little tropical paradise, and it was really good. It was great to reset and come back and remember that my philosophy is work is play, and it hadn't felt like play in a few months. So it all happened at the right time, and I'm happy to get started fresh, in 2023.
Excellent. Well, I'm envious of being able to take some time off. So maybe in my not so distant future, I'll be there myself. So
Yeah, I just took a little minimal recording kit with me. That way, if I was inspired to work while I was there, I could. And I ended up recording a podcast while I was there. So, you can use it as a tax write-off.
there you go. Excellent. So, Joe, you're a cannabis lifestyle guide. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you into the cannabis industry?
Yeah. So back in my early 20s, when I first experimented with cannabis, I learned that I was having a very different experience than a lot of my peers. And I was using it as a tool early on for being creative, for doing my writing. I was the feature editor of my college newspaper. I was a mass communication student. And so, I was using cannabis as a tool, although we didn't have the education around that. There wasn't, an internet and social media telling us what to do. And so I just kind of developed a relationship with cannabis that has carried on my entire life. And I found myself working in corporate America as a marketing director for a big real estate developer and still using cannabis as a tool, but it wasn't acceptable. I did not live in a cannabis legal state. I was having to hide it. And it just felt ridiculous to me that this medicine that had changed my life was something that was so taboo that I had to hide it as a grown-ass woman. So I just was like, okay, maybe I chose the wrong dream. Maybe I need to do things differently. So I quit my job, gave away my things, moved to Bologna, Italy for a midlife retirement to figure out what would it look like to get paid to be myself. And, going daily writing rituals and cannabis consumption. I had taken some cannabis oil with me, and, the cannabis in Italy is not amazing. So, it was just something that I took a deliberate pause at the age of 36 to reevaluate things. And I knew 16 months later, when I was moving back to the United States, that I needed to get my ass out to California, that cannabis was somehow going to be at the center of what, my future plans were. And when I got to California, everyone's in this bubble and, they know cannabis and they assume everyone knows as much as they know. And I just realized that education was going to be a huge obstacle for getting the rest of the country on board. And so, with my background in media and communications, I felt like that was the place that I could lend my efforts to help the bigger cause. So then, Cannabis Lifestyle Guide, I started realizing that people had a lot of questions. And since I'd had such a long-standing relationship with the plant, people liked talking to me, and I would help people get their medical cards. And then when I'd follow back up with them, they hadn't been to a dispensary because they didn't know enough. They were intimidated. So I started doing some hand holding and some show and tell type stuff. and realized that, there was a market for this. And so I just started calling myself a cannabis lifestyle guide and helping people figure out where their lives were breaking down, where, maybe they had addictions to other substances, or they were tired of being on the pharmaceutical train, or they had sleep issues or whatever. And I could help them figure out where cannabis might be able to be a tool to help them. And that was a great business, but it wasn't moving the needle fast enough for me. So I just was like, Joanna, you have a degree in communications. Why don't you start a podcast? So in 2017, that spring, I released the very first episode of Casually Baked, the podcast, and I've been at this for the last 6 years.
Excellent. And you have a great show. I've listened to many episodes. Um, you talk about Canna-Confidence. Is that something you can explain to us what that means?
Yeah. So, whenever I was telling you about those people that were nervous about going into a dispensary, a lot of the folks that we know, they trust somebody in a white coat to tell them what to take, when to take it. Do we take it with food or, on an empty stomach? And they need specific instructions. And so cannabis is nuanced. There are so many different forms of consumption and dosing, and whether or not you need a microdose or a macro dose. I mean, all of these things affect your overall experience. So, in order to experiment, you need to be confident that that what you're doing, it's not going to kill you, that you can move through and develop your own personal relationship with the plant with confidence. And so for me, if I can teach people the basics of the plant and open their eyes to um, different people's stories and talk to doctors and geneticists and pharmacists and farmers and people that are helping grow this industry and create this medicine, if I can help people understand these things and learn the language and know how to ask the right questions when they go into a dispensary, now all of a sudden they're confident to take their health and well-being into their own hands and stop giving away their power to a doctor.
Right. Yeah, that's great. It's a huge issue, education, people feeling confident about something that still has this stigma dragged around with it, and it's probably preventing a lot of people from even exploring cannabis.
Well, yeah, and especially when you constantly hear, well, there's not enough studies done on it yet. Well, there were barely any studies done on a vaccination that, were being rolled out super fast. And, there's media telling people to get the jab and, all this different stuff. And I'm like, pump the brakes, folks, and then they're telling us that this plant that has been around longer than any of us and there's a historical record of it being medicine for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. I, give me a break.
Yeah. Yeah, I do studies on it every day. I can
Yeah,
tell you what I
exactly.
came up with. Um, yeah, it is sad, I think, too, to think about, especially the last few years, what everyone's gone through, and how we hold the establishment to this level where, well, if it doesn't come from them, well, then, even though there's local governments that, Colorado and Washington was the first to nullify, prohibition against cannabis and legalize it, and we're still having conversations where, well, because my doctor told me that
Yeah.
maybe I should or I shouldn't, when we know how
Well, and
many
especially,
doctors get things wrong.
yeah, and the fact that they weren't taught about the endocannabinoid system in medical
Mm,
school. So unless they actively go out and get this education that is available, then they're not gonna be on the side of the plant. And it's not even saying, yes, it's always the right answer, but it's an option that should be considered, especially when there's so many people that are dealing with a bazillion side effects from pharmaceutical drugs. And, a lot of the elderly people in my life who are taking thousands of dollars of medication a month. And, it's like some of these drugs are to counteract some of the things that are happening with the other drugs. And so at some point, you just have to stop and take a look at what nature offers us and consider that it might be a better option.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny you say that. I haven't, fortunately, I haven't had to go to a doctor in a while, and my my dad was recommending some real estate advice from his accountant, and I said, "Well, does your accountant own uh, rental property, and does he have those types of properties?" Well, no, he doesn't, and so it's almost like if my doctor doesn't know about the endocannabinoid system, or then I don't want him as my doctor. I don't want my accountant to give me advice on something that he himself has zero experience on.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. 100% that.
Yeah. And I think it's sometimes it sounds like you might go through this as well. It's like, one step forward, two steps back. Like we make a lot of progress and then all of a sudden something happens where it's like, well, we don't have these studies. Well, you know,
Well, and the other thing, to always keep in mind, and especially when you're having conversations with other people who are skeptics of the whole thing, is okay, so, the World Health Organization or the FDA or any of these organizations, look at who's funding them. Where is their money coming from? And when a lot of these organizations have the majority of their money coming from pharmaceutical companies, you can't tell me that they're giving me an unbiased set of information. It's just not true. They are bought and paid for. And this is just the reality of our government that we keep learning more and more about every day. People are waking up to the truth that our government doesn't give a shit about us. I mean, the Safe Banking Act that just failed again, like, who's fucking surprised about that? I'm
mhm.
not. I mean, I have a CBD skincare company and took me almost a year to find a fucking bank that would work with me. And I was in California and ended up banking with First Federal Bank of Florida.
Hmm.
That's ridiculous that I had to be 3 time zones away from my banking institution. But that's the reality of trying to be in this space. And so, as the people that do step up and try to enter the cannabis space, they're not doing it because they think they're gonna get rich anymore. Like, that facade is, like, over. There are so many talented people in the cannabis industry looking for jobs right now because there's so many layoffs happening. At this point, if you're running into the burning building, that's because you fucking give a shit about this plant and about the planet and about doing something good for humanity. Like, this is, the fun and games part of this is
Right.
over.
Yeah, and it is. I'm on LinkedIn, and I see a lot of these recruiters and dispensaries and executives and huge layoffs before the end of the year, and now not there's still a demand for employment, but like you said, the pool's that much greater, and
Yeah, and the job opportunities are in big cannabis, kinda selling your soul to the proverbial
hmm
devil. And, that's a tough call to make if you're somebody who is for the farmers and is for craft cannabis and is for, growing mom and pop businesses. It's tough and a lot of people are having to make that decision right now. I have not made that decision. I have am working a side hustle outside of cannabis, because I can't make it on my own now just doing what I was doing before. And the cost of living and everything has gone up and, you can't buy toilet paper for less than $15. So, you we're having to get creative and, a lot of times I don't even have time to do my show, but me doing my show is what lights me
Mm,
up. And so if I don't do my show, I'm doing myself a
right.
disservice. So it's tough. It's really tough being a creator in the cannabis space. It's tough being um, a business owner in the cannabis space. And so, whatever we can do to support these small businesses and craft farmers and things like that, we really have to try to do that. And, a lot of people still buy their weed on the gray market. And, a lot of this stuff is probably still great weed going out the back door from people that can't afford to lose it for the price that they're going to get it on the legal market, or the price they'll get for it on the legal market. But damn it, it's so important for us to try to stay in and go into the dispensary and ask for that craft cannabis and ask, which of these businesses, what's grown locally, what's the local thing, like, just making those choices with our dollars, because we're not getting to make those choices from the corporate perspective. I can't affect much change other than asking people to see the truth and go in and vote with their dollar.
Right. I've had several conversations lately about getting my medical card. I don't have a medical card here in Florida. It's only medicinal, there's no recreational. And the people that want me to get my card, they say, oh, the more people that have the card, the more opportunities and benefits open for card holders and more, whether it's state or I guess not federal funding, but more access to medical and I certainly get all of that. But one of the pushbacks I had with one woman I was talking with, she was really like kind of pressuring me to do this, and I said, to me, the system is so screwed up. I have to pay a doctor. He just wants his money. I got to pay the state. They just want their money. And here in Florida,
Mhm.
we interviewed a girl several months ago because she didn't have the receipt for her pen when she was pulled over. She was arrested, charged with a felony, even though she's a medical card holder. And I was on a podcast the other night, and a gentleman, not I don't know his whole specific story, but he was arrested, and he was a medical card holder, and had to go to court with his physician to fight to be able to smoke while on probation for his seizures. And so
This is
after all these
insane.
stories, I'm like, and this is the system you want me to pay to be a part of? Now, I'm fortunate enough I don't have medical ailments that I need to use cannabis for. Um, I mean, maybe I'm mental, maybe that's why I use it. But for me, it's definitely more recreation and maybe some anxiety, trying to help go to sleep. But all these stories of people in the system getting screwed, and now I'm supposed to support the system. I am a gray market and a black market supporter for those reasons. I mean, I'm 41 years old, so for pretty much all of my life, at least my cannabis consumption life, it was illegal. It was how we operated and did things. And I'm not opposed to getting my medical card, but I think conversations like this, your podcast, my podcast, there's benefits there to the medical community. And if the only thing I can do to help the medical community is pay $250 and get a card, then I guess maybe I'll do that. But I don't think that's the case, and I really haven't heard a strong argument as to why I need to. One of the guys said, just think of it this way: you're paying them, so that they stay off your back. And I'm like, I haven't paid them anything, and they're not on my back now, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and it's curious to me that they would have medical, but not have decriminalized. Because if because, I mean, a vape pen, that should have been nothing. There should have been she shouldn't have gotten a ticket or anything if in my humble opinion. But, that's one of the things now that I'm back in Texas, and it's, just a very limited medical cannabis market, and you can't even get flower in the medical system here. It's all gummies, oils, that sort of thing. And I have considered, I'm like, well, I should at least get my medical card. That way, if I am pulled over, I at least have something. Um, but we also have a strong contingency of cities in Texas that are making efforts to decriminalize. And so that's one of the things that I've taken upon myself is to start talking about that within my own community. So, like, fuck what the state is doing. What do we in our municipality want? And so, being able to create change on a very small local level where I have created a bubble of safety for myself and for the other consumers in my community. And then we go from there. Then we branch out to our county. Then we branch out to our state. But, we always, in everything in life, you take care of you first, you take care of your home first, you take care of your family, your community. So, a lot of this for me, the solution is just start small.
Yeah, I'm in Orlando, and here in Orange County, we have a county mayor and a city mayor. Um, but it is decriminalized here, and I don't really hear any stories about somebody getting their balls busted from the police or not. So at least
Mhm.
here, and I think Miami's very similar, and I think Jacksonville area is very
Yeah.
similar. I don't know the complete laws, but um, and I understand what decriminalization can do, but a lot of times I say the conversation needs to be legalization. That even though decriminalization, you know, it may prevent some people from going to jail, it still means I can't buy it or sell it. I'm just not as in as much trouble if I'm
Yeah.
caught with it.
Yeah, and for me, I just think because of the propaganda and the stigma that it's like, we can't go from 0 to 60. We have to, jump a few hurdles along that path. And and so that's why it's like, okay, well, decriminalization, that's a hurdle. Now that it's decriminalized, are you noticing anything happening in your city or traffic accidents going up or arrests or any of these kind of things. You know, you, people need to feel comfortable. And so it's a lot of times it's just like trickling in, beside other than or as opposed to like just turning the faucet on full blast. And and unfortunately we do have to do that because since as long as I've been alive, there has been a propaganda machine against plant medicine. And so, people are brainwashed, we're programmed. It is the way the human brain works. And so deprogramming is takes a lot longer to do, I think, than the actual beginning programming.
Yeah, I guess I would just look at other states like Colorado and Washington and say, they're fully legalized. We can have the conversation about legalization because we can look at active states that are doing this now. And I mean, I
Yeah.
completely get the whole decriminalization push. Someone was telling me, how many laws changed in Canada? I guess there was like several laws, and then when they legalized it, there was like 40 laws. And I'm like, well, it's the same thing with decriminalization. If there was nothing before, then they're still going to create laws to decriminalize. And I guess I'm passionate like yourself, Joe, where it's like my rights shouldn't be up for discussion or for a vote, and I shouldn't have to. One of the things I pushed back the other night is, so I'm paying for my freedom. What you're saying is, if I want freedom to be able to smoke this plant where I want, which I mean, I'm not obnoxious smoking it, in front of a assisted living facility, or you know what I mean. But I mean, I walk around my neighborhood, I walk my dog.
They Yeah, you'd
I
probably make
probably
friends
would,
if you
yeah.
were there.
Um, but it's just one of these things where it's like I almost feel like we need to. I know where we are as a society, and it's these incremental steps, and unfortunately, things move slow, especially in Texas and Florida. The weather's a little nicer, everybody moves a little bit slower. It's like vacation mode, right? Um, but I my one step forward, two steps back. I feel like when we give into, okay, yeah, we got it passed. Well, now there's only 10 licenses, so you better get your money up. Where I think, you know, yeah, sure. New York now they have legal dispensaries you can go legally buy, and maybe it was the Wild West. You would see people smoking bongs in the middle of Central Park and all that stuff. Um, but I, maybe it's me and my philosophical views, but I also think if we have the conversation about legalization, maybe it comes back to decriminalization, but let's start with what we really want, and then usually the compromise is somewhat in the middle, right? Um,
Yeah, I think the reason that it's, so tricky is that, legalization is going to mean the entire industry being taken over by corporate interests. So, we all know that. So, I'm not somebody who's, like, really racing for federal legalization right now because there are a lot of bad actors and, it's just something that we need to still be able to keep doing what we're doing in our own states, figure it out because, in 5 to 10 years, we're gonna have a completely corporate cannabis system. The pharmaceutical industry will be creating chemically derived cannabinoids. I already get press releases from people who are like, "Oh, our lab has created trichomes in a petri dish, 10 times more than the actual plant can produce. We don't need the cannabis plant anymore." And I'm just like, "Seriously? You're already trying to take nature out of
mhm.
fucking cannabis?" So, this is what's waiting for us on the other side of federal legalization. So, for me, I'm like, you know what? I'm fine. I'm fine. It's fine. Let's all figure out how to grow our own medicine, grow our own food, just take care of ourselves and go from there. Because if we continue to give our power away and we continue to beg the government to make what we're doing legal, then they're just going to take it away from us and then feed it to us in a way that's not as good for us as it is when it's just in our backyard. So, yes, I look forward to cannabis and psychedelics being descheduled, um, but I'm not hopeful that that they're gonna get a conscience and do it better than we're doing it
Yeah, I
now.
mean, the worst thing that could happen is the government gets involved. But unfortunately, like with the safe banking and people in jail for nonviolent crimes, it 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 needs to happen on a federal level. I don't
Yeah, and
safe
safe
banking. Yeah.
baking, like, give me a break. What's safe about our banking institutions either? They're robbing us all blind too. I mean, it's a house of
Well,
cards,
they
Mike.
have great names, right? The Patriot Act. It sounded so awesome, like it's for patriotism that we're going to be able to spy on everybody and read all your emails and yeah, they
Yeah.
always make it sound
I
so
mean,
grandiose.
yeah, if you have a really good elevator pitch and a good headline, then it doesn't even matter. You can just shove so much shit in there because people have a short attention span. We have an acronym for it, TLDR, too long, didn't read. Give me the Cliffs notes. And so, yeah, we get the wool pulled over our eyes constantly because we've become lazy as a society. Instead of going out and seeking information and doing our own homework, we're relying on the people that mainstream media is a piece of shit, and it's bought and paid for mostly by the pharmaceutical industry. And so, for me, part of my mission, I'm devoted to media as medicine. Like, I'm a truth speaker. Like, if you want to know the truth, you don't turn on your local mainstream news anymore, because that's all fucking propaganda. You have to go out and seek information on the things that you're curious about,
Mhm.
and that takes effort, and people are lazy. And, so what do? We have to encourage our community to wake the fuck up and do their homework and get smart and experiment with plant medicine and getting quiet and, meditating and spending time in nature. Like, these are the sorts of things that can break that programming. When I lived in downtown Oakland and they had shut down the city for the quote unquote pandemic. I mean, I lost my entire business overnight because of that. And I would get messages from people who were concerned about my safety and all this stuff. And I'm like, where are you getting this? Like, I actually live here. I'm walking around downtown Oakland. It's me and the homeless people. None of them are wearing masks, none of them are dead. I don't know what you're concerned about. But it's like, that's what my family halfway across the country, whatever they were seeing of what they thought my life was like, wasn't even true. So it's like, be your own fact checker. I call my friends in Italy or Canada or, Florida or DC or Baltimore or wherever. If something's going on, I pick up the phone and call them. What's happening
Mm.
right now? And when we do that sort of thing, it takes a hell of a lot of the fear and misconception out of it. So, recheck who your community is, who your news sources are, where you're getting your information, what food you're eating. All of these things will change your life. I get on the
That's
soapbox,
no worries.
sorry.
That's why we're having this conversation. It's great. Um, I guess that leads me to another question. So I'm 41. When I got into the cannabis industry, I had been a cannabis user for 20 years plus, but I didn't realize how educated the community needs to be. And of course, with Delta 8 and CBG and, all these other things that are coming out, us experienced users need to be educated as well. So I guess my question I want to lead into is I see a lot of the younger generation, the 20 somethings, let's say, and they're not watching the TV. They still get it on their phones. The TV's the new phone, YouTube's the new TV or news source. And I'm curious what your thoughts are 5, 10 years from now, where you might see the industry. Maybe you have some predictions and what you think about the younger generation kind of spearheading, I guess, where this industry is going.
I think young people today, their heart's in the right place, but their heads are too far in their screen to have a real unbiased view of what's happening. Um, I have a lot of littles who, my sister's kids, my best friend's children, ranging from tweens to late 20s. And it's alarming the amount of
Mm.
time they spend on their phones or playing video games or, Snapchatting, being in, virtual worlds, being in the metaverse. Like, they're escaping our world by creating these virtual worlds. And that's not the answer. So, whenever I do see a young person who's excited about farming or, who's the child of a second generation cannabis farmer who's like, yo, I know this is hard, but I want to keep doing it. I want to do what our family's doing. Huh, that makes me almost want to cry because I feel like those kinds of folks are fewer and far between. And so I think it's really important for us to nurture our relationships with those kids because I know they have it in them. They have that big compassionate heart that we need in this world, but I think they need a little bit more in real life experience I'm a Gen Xer, and, we're the latchkey kid generation where it's just like, you fend for yourself. We didn't spend our lives on our phones because we didn't have them. And, I just feel like we're a little bit um, tougher.
Sure.
Our generation's a little bit tougher. And, there's if we hold hands and we help and usher in this generation and get them excited about these things instead of shaming them for being um, digitally addicted, frankly. I think that's an important step. Now, where do I think the industry is going? I like I said earlier, I think it's going to be big corporate cannabis, and it's going to be just like the alcohol industry and tobacco industry, and that's because they're creating it that way. Behind the scenes, that's what's happening. There are alcohol companies that are getting into the distribution game, and there will be these few big brands that buy out these other craft brands, and everybody else will just kind of go away. And for me, what I hope that I can help usher in is, what, if we got to play the corporate cannabis game, fine, but let me be someone that can speak to corporate cannabis and remind them of the beauty of terroir and of farming and of craft experiences, and get them to pull under their umbrella, because at that point, if we're federally legal, then we're going to have interstate commerce, and making sure that all of these other states are carrying the cream of the crop. They've got the Emerald Triangle cannabis option. We've got your Walmart weed on the shelf. Great. But then where's that top shelf shit for the connoisseur? Where is that experience of, wine shopping and being able to, shop by region? I should be able to shop for my cannabis that way. And to me, that is a way that craft cannabis can survive alongside corporate cannabis. But that means we have to convince corporate cannabis that there is a sophisticated consumer base that will make that worth their while to, add it to their
Mm.
offerings. But, so here's the other thing too. There's always gonna be the people that I trust my doctor over trusting growing my own medicine. It's just gonna happen. It just is what it is. So, alongside having interstate commerce and people being able to shop more freely and for exactly what they want, I think the pharmaceutical industry is going to they're not gonna have a choice. Like, they've already been called out for the addiction, for the pain meds and all this kind of stuff. Like, we all know that that's true. We all know that they've gotten rich and made a lot of people drug addicts. So, I think they are going to use cannabis and the different cannabinoid combinations to create new pain medicines and hopefully get this other shit off the shelves. So the people that do want to rely on their doctor, maybe it's for a movement disorder or cancer or whatever, and they want a specific dosage and they want somebody in a white coat to guide them, I think they will have their own cannabis product line to work with
Mm.
that is very white coat.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to be like punching in our ailments, and they're going to say you need 10% of this and 20% of this, and it's going to be more crafted. Um, but yeah, I'm certainly concerned because, I mean, I think we live in fascism nowadays, where the government and corporations are pretty much acting together, which is the definition of fascism. So
Mhm.
I mean, you know, I'm not probably as nervous because I am a gray black market guy, but I certainly understand where we're leading and where it's heading, especially where governments they only get more power and corporations only get bigger and stronger because
Yeah.
of their connection to government. So I'm certainly concerned with that aspect of it. Um, Joe, have you ever heard of the term or the philosophy agorism?
Um, I that I mean, no. I'm like agoraphobia. I'm like
Okay, so
agor is like
agorism
what are we talking about here?
was a concept created, I think, in the 70s. Samuel Konkin was the one that came up with this concept, and his philosophy
Okay.
his
What's the
philosophy is that
definition?
agorism works in the gray and the black markets, where um, if let's say a farmer's market for weed, so to say, right? We have all different types of vendors show up. Maybe I've got CBD. Maybe I'm a graphic designer. Maybe the next guy does product packaging. And instead of being in the system, you're outside of the system and you're operating voluntarily peer to peer. And instead of all legality aside, because certainly that's not something that you can just pop up and do without a permit or anything else. But the idea is to start on the local level, start in your communities. And the more people that, excuse me, the more people that start to act this way, and like you said, at the local level, the more communities that come together and realize, oh, there's nothing wrong with this. Most of my neighbors are older. They're in their 70s and 80s. And when they found out I was like a weed smoker, they were like, oh, but you smoke every day. I'm like, yeah, and I still accomplish all these things. So um, I think a lot of it is starting at the local level, and agorism is really just from the local level working together outside of the system so that more people, I know in the 70s it was probably more attainable than it is now, but um, more people realize that maybe if we work outside the system has to change to try and bring us back in, which was a lot of my pushback with getting a medical card. um, I'm fortunate enough where my friends grow, so I can get quality stuff without having to go to a dispensary, which may or may not be quality stuff anyway. So
Yeah.
um,
Right. Yeah, knowing your farmer. If I know my farmer directly or I'm only 1 degree of separation from my farmer, that's my ideal. I wanna
right.
know who grew my medicine. Now and yeah, this concept you're talking about, I mean, it sounds I mean, we would have cannabis farmers markets in Northern California when I lived there and, the different vendors like you're talking about, these pop-up, um, things would happen. Mendocino County, was where I was visiting and or living, and so, it's that concept is alive and well. I mean, people have been living like that in communities and
Hmm.
villages for fucking ever. I mean, I just when I was in Belize, I was visiting this little village called Monkey River, and you can't get there by car. You have to, you're going through the jungle in a little boat, and that's how you get there. And there's less than 200 people in this entire village, and everybody knows everyone. And there is no crime because everybody knows everybody. So nobody's going to take your purse or take your stuff. And most of them are family, and they have everything they need. Everybody has a skill set. Everybody shares with the community. So, you know, the fact that we all live in more larger towns or giant cities anymore, that concept seems
It's
so
not right.
foreign, but it's not. It's like the basics
We
of humanity.
the beginning of November, 2 months ago, we just had the largest Florida cannabis festival. 20,000 people over Saturday and a Sunday and a weekend. People were selling mushrooms, weed. It was private security. It was on a big farmers market. That's actually what it's called, is a farmers market. But it was just open air vendors selling. There was no fights, no, this guy had his MAGA shirt on, and I didn't really see any Biden shirts. I don't know that those are big sellers, um, but there were plenty of different ethnicities and plenty of reasons that people could have argued and gotten into shit with each other, and it didn't happen. So um, I think those are the types of things that need to be promoted more so that people realize. I had a friend come, and she called herself like an older hippie, and she came, she's like, oh my god, I just went through this cloud of smoke, and then she came to support. We were there set up, and I said, well, what's going on? Is Shouldn't this be how it is? Shouldn't this be how we go about consuming and purchasing cannabis? And she agreed. She said, yeah, this I don't, as much as I didn't want to walk through a cloud of smoke, nothing. There were families there, people walking their dogs, and she said, "Yeah, this seems like a great time. I don't understand why we're still where we're at." So um, that's one of the reasons, I think, because I had a job a year and a half ago where I worked with a lot of 20 somethings, and I volunteer on weekends with a lot of teenagers, and they do subscribe to what authority tells them, but they also don't care about what adults tell them, right? So, maybe their teachers, or if they happen to catch Dr. Fauci, maybe they believe what's told to them from authority, but they certainly, I'm the adult. I'm 41, so sometimes they push back on me, and I say, oh, this is great. This is good to have these types of conversations. So I I think no, no, no.
Well, and a
I
lot
think,
I
unfortunately, the
sorry,
government's
keep
a lot
going.
smarter and quicker with reacting, and I think, especially with social media, um, you know, uh, I'm thinking there's got to be some kind of cyber attack coming. They keep talking about it so much that it's,
What do you mean coming? Are you kidding me? Like, you're seeing all the stuff trickle out from Twitter.
or something happens where we blame somebody else for something, and now all of a sudden, uh, I mean, certainly speech is censored online, but I'm thinking more of on a grander scale where I don't want to say a 9/11 or a pandemic, but that's what would have to happen for them to restrict or put some kind of, uh, you know,
Well, this is the problem. The restrictions, the continuing to pull apart our rights, our constitutional rights, that's the issue. And a lot of the young people that will fight with you have been programmed from elementary school and in college uh, to be on the side of this propaganda, and you can't convince them that it's propaganda because it literally has been taught to them for as long as they've been in school. And so many parents are just now starting to wake up to, like, holy shit, I really need to pay attention to what my kid's being taught. And so that's why you're seeing all these people raising hell at school board meetings now and, getting more involved because people are waking up and saying, what is going on? I can't even have a conversation with my teen anymore. And it's just the reality of the situation that, we are constantly being programmed and we have to fight like hell to make sure that we know truth from fiction. And, and truth is truth is truth. And, when we start getting into fights over the
mhm.
definition of a fact and the definition of truth, that's when everything's gone off the fucking rails. So, of course, they're going to listen to fucking Dr. Fauci. And when it's like, but the particulate size and going through this mask, I mean, you just start looking at stuff critically the way we were taught to in science class. You know, when I start looking at things that way and I'm like, well, what I'm seeing is not what you're preaching. And then all of a sudden you're in fights with friends because different people wake up at different rates. And, we just have to continue to be voices of truth, compassionate voices of truth. You have to be willing to have the uncomfortable conversation. You have to be willing to show up at the cannabis festival and walk through that cloud of smoke and feel a little bit uncomfortable, but realize, wow, this is totally normal, and these people are selling food and medicine and jams and cupcakes, and everything is just like a normal farmer's
Right.
market. What am I so freaked out about? So it really just takes us engaging in life, getting out of our bubble, getting off of our screens, walking out our front door, walking around the town square, going and talking to people. Go to a restaurant by yourself, sit at the bar, talk to strangers, like get yourself out there and get involved in life. And then you decide if the world is going to hell in a handbasket or if that's just what we're being told, because fear is the fastest way to control anybody. And if somebody's trying to
Hmm.
scare me, then they're not on my side. They don't have my best interest in mind if
Right.
they're trying to scare the shit out of me.
Yeah, sign now. This discount goes away tomorrow. That's usually it's usually when I say no immediately. But um,
Well, yeah, and whenever I'm like, back in the when they're when I'm in the Bay Area and they're selling, the whole message of, get a free joint with a jab, and I'm like, "Wait a minute. The pharmaceutical industry hates the cannabis industry, and now we're gonna give away a free joint if you'll take our shot? Like,
or
this is
a donut
insane."
or a cheeseburger. Uh, So, Joe, the Cannabis
Yeah.
show, we created this show because we want to glean some valuable information from different entrepreneurs and business professionals like yourself in the industry. And with your background in sales and marketing, is there any advice or strategy you can give to maybe somebody like myself or any of our listeners that are looking to start a podcast?
I love storytelling. I think it's one of the most important things that we do. And if you want to start a podcast, being very clear on that story and making sure that you're passionate about it. But somebody like you who already you're going, you've got your thing dialed in. Um, I think right now it's putting less of your eggs in that social media basket. I feel like we're constantly chasing the dragon with social media. It's like, I'm not doing enough. Somebody else is doing it better. We can start feeling pretty bad about ourselves, and then what happens when your account gets shut down because you talk about cannabis too much or your hashtags get you flagged? And so, the thing that I think is so important is to make sure you're developing your personal brand. Make sure that you're developing your own website. Make sure that you are giving value that's leading people back to your site, so that you can collect these people's information and have your own conversation with them, because then it doesn't matter if Instagram goes away or TikTok or, Facebook blows up because they get in so much trouble. If you've put all your eggs in the social media basket and you're not developing your own personal site and brand and newsletter, then all of a sudden you're back at square one. So for me, it's like, okay, what am I doing to develop my own community right now? And make sure that you're having a personal conversation with them. People want to hear what you have to say. And there are a lot of people out in the world that might be preaching the same message, but they're gonna hear it from you a little bit different, Mike, and somebody's gonna be like, "I didn't think about it that way." And, I get people like that with Casually Baked. Somebody may have told them
Mm.
something 1,000 times, but it's the way I say it that resonates with them. So, don't compare yourself to someone else. If what you're doing lights you up and you feel good about it, and you are providing truth and love and light out into the world, you keep doing that, but you do it by taking care of your own brand, your own site, your own newsletter, and and the rest of it, do it if it feels good. Like, I only post on social media anymore when I'm inspired to do it, or if I've just put out a show within a day or two of putting out a new episode, I will post about that. I do that, probably more for my guest than I do for myself. Um, but, that's the only time I get
Yeah.
on social media, 'cause
Mhm.
otherwise it's a soul suck. I feel terrible, and I look up and I've lost, like, where the hell is this last hour
Yeah.
gone? And wait, I'd gotten on here to do
It's
something,
mind
and I
control.
got sucked into the feed. I mean, it yes. So, put it down, pick up a
Awesome. I
joint,
love
and,
that.
puff, puff, pass it
Um,
on.
do you want to talk about Pod Connects at all?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you a little bit about PodConnects. I joined this podcast network, on January 1st of last year. It was just getting started. There were just a handful of podcasts in the network, and I have 20 years of sales and marketing background, mostly in media, in radio and magazines, and, um and so I just felt really passionate about helping this little network grow. And it's been a lot of fun being able to connect with other podcasters like you who have their own unique message about cannabis. And we are putting us all together in this network and pooling together all of our downloads so that we can become an attractive option for advertisers, be it cannabis advertisers or mainstream advertisers that really want to reach the cannabis community. So, that whole concept of, it takes a village. That's how I feel about cannabis media right now. I was doing it on my own and it was a lot. And I was able to get advertisers, but again, it was a lot. I'm wearing all of the hats. So now, as part of the PodConnects network, I have a built in sales force. I have the camaraderie of other cannabis and plant based medicine shows, and, once a month, we get together on a call and we have some sort of continuing education. Maybe it's a voice coach that comes on. Maybe it's somebody to talk to us about, trademark and copyright stuff. And, we just, we're trying to help elevate the message and be media as medicine, trying to give people one stop shopping, so to speak, for our industry. And, that helps people like you and me monetize what we're doing rather than it being a marketing expense or, God forbid, a glorified hobby. So, I think anyone in the cannabis space or the, plant medicine space in general, wellness in general, I've been pushing for us to expand a little bit further because, for me, cannabis is it's not just for recreation. This is something that I use as part of a wellness lifestyle. And so, that's kind of where we're going with PodConnects, is trying to encompass a beautiful world where we utilize all kinds of plant medicine and natural solutions. So, I look forward to hopefully welcoming you into the PodConnects network, and, podconx.com. If you're somebody who is either looking for good cannabis content, you can go there and shop all of the different shows. There's over 50 shows on the network now. Or if you are a content creator, you can learn more there about joining us. And if you're interested in advertising to the cannabis community, we also have a marketplace there, where you can submit your ad and get everything going. But then I personally help craft the messaging. A lot of times people will submit what they want to say, but you want somebody within the community to kind of help you massage that message. And then each of the cannabis podcast hosts or the podcast hosts record that message. So, you have that personalized ad on the pod of your choice. And so far,
Awesome.
it's going really
I'm
well. We're growing like
definitely
crazy.
interested. When we spoke previously, you had mentioned it, and I've yet to really delve into it. So I'm certainly more motivated now, and I think the concept is great. So you will probably see me on there very soon, Joe. So thank you for that. And Joe, this has been a
All right.
pleasure speaking with
Nice.
you. You're certainly a wealth of information. You definitely live up to the cannabis lifestyle guide. And thank you for all this extra time you've given us today. Please let everybody know the best place they can find more of you.
Yes, if you'll go to casuallybaked.com, there you will find all kinds of educational resources. I have an online store where you can find casually baked merch. All 250 plus episodes of the podcast also live there. I also have a scheduling button there if you would like cannabis lifestyle coaching, or if you are a marketer or a podcaster and you would like some coaching on building your personal brand. That's my sweet spot.
Excellent. Make sure you like and share this video because it helps us get great guests like Joe. So thank you for that. And make sure you subscribe to us so that you don't miss more great episodes like this one. So, Joe, it's been a pleasure again. Thank you very much for coming on Dro TV today. And everybody tuned in, thank you. More episodes on the way.